I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Josh, do you want to see if anyone signed in, please? First thing on the agenda is to approve the regular agenda. Did anyone have any questions, additions, subtractions to the existing agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, I got a motion to approve the agenda by Rick, second by Sean. If there's no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 3-0. Next, the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or any items in the consent agenda?
I have one. I'm just commenting on the, yeah, sorry.
No, just for that, you don't.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, my bad, go ahead.
Okay.
Proceed.
Okay, if there's no questions or comments, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Rick. No other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, next on the agenda is public invited to be heard on matters not on the agenda. Brian, you look like you're the only one that would like to speak at this time.
Hi, Brian Paulson, 206 4th Street Southwest. I know there's been a lot of talk about the petition. I just want to talk about one aspect of it, I guess. I did contact the Secretary of State's office. So the registry, I know, was used to validate, or I should say invalidate signatures. I just want to point out that the registry, when you pull from the state, it's like a database, and you pull from a certain day. So if you pull from today, it's going to be different than when I got the signatures. So you can't, that's why I talked to the Secretary of State. They don't use the registry. They just look at a name and the birthday, they make sure the address is in Minnesota, and that's good to go. They can't use the registry because that's from a different day than when signatures were collected. I did ask for a copy for here because I figured it'd not be very different. And she actually informed me that I would be surprised at how different the registry changes daily, she said, even for a small town like this. And I know I talked to the city administrator today that the petition, I understand it is public, I know that. But to print out 60 pages and put it on every single desk in the city hall seems like kind of a waste. And then the last part is the, Secretary of State said that when people do ask for a copy of the petition, they need to go through it still because it's not completely public. If someone puts their full birthday on there, which I know was on my petition for multiple people, that is restricted, and they need to comment out the day and the month, not the year. So I just have little concerns that some people's data, I know we just passed the data resolution last meeting. I just have some concerns that maybe that was printed out a lot of times and put out in the public that really shouldn't have been out there. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to comment to the council at this time? Okay, thank you. And next, we're going to have, Josh, do you want to kind of start the ball rolling here on item number 5 before we go into the public hearing?
Yes. Yes, I can do that. So as the city council's aware, the EDA is going through a strategic planning process, and now that we're kind of wrapping up the industrial park. And for the EDA, this includes updating its economic development district, which allows the EDA to look at the entire community as it determines next steps. For the city council, this part of this is staff working with the city attorney to clean up the enabling resolution to allow the EDA to better carry out its mission while also requiring yearly accountability. Following a city's council decision last meeting to direct the EDA to move forward with the EDA lease revenue bond, the city attorney would like the city council to update its enabling resolution to allow the EDA to bond for projects with the approval of the city council. So the city attorney did look at the enabling resolution, and I've attached a red line copy into the packet for your viewing with 2 recommended changes. The first change comes in section 5.16, which would require the EDA to review its strategic plan annually and then keep the city council kind of informed generally of its directions and the plans it's considering. The second change is updating the language in section 6, which involves debt that the EDA may take on. And within that particular section, the city attorney recommends removing section 6.2 and 6.3, and then updating language in 6.4. Basically, under, I know the big worry with the city council was EDA issuing debt without permission, and 6.1 really covers that language. And it was the city attorney's recommendation to remove 6.2 and 6.3 because otherwise the EDA, he says, with that language would not be able to issue debt and ultimately would have to come back and ask the city council to issue the debt for them. So it would, especially in this case where the city council was directing the EDA to issue debt, would create kind of a loop that the EDA needs to issue the debt, not the city council. So I can certainly stand for any questions you may have in this process, but ultimately to update an enabling resolution for the EDA per state statute, a public hearing must be held, which is why we are holding the public hearing this evening. It was also the city attorney's recommendation that since the entire council was not here, that the public hearing be held, but ultimately any sort of vote be held off until the next meeting, so that way the other city council members would have an opportunity to weigh in on this particular issue.
We've never done that before.
Held a public hearing and not voted?
Well, I can't speak to that, but just because the fact that two of the members are not here, we haven't held off votes before that I'm aware of. That we've, all of a sudden, oh, we need 5 now. I mean, we do have a quorum.
Yeah, no, that was just the recommendation from him. He just said that would be his recommendation, I guess, going forward. It would be up to the council, I guess, as to whether they wanted to vote this evening.
It's not
Well, I
on the
mean,
agenda.
if I'm gonna be on vacation a month from now and when something pops up that I see and I wanna be able to vote on it,
Fair.
are we gonna do it? Are they gonna wait for me? I'm gonna guess probably not.
Fair.
But
But to Rick's
My only
point,
question
yeah,
is it's not on the agenda.
not on
The only thing on the agenda is the hearing itself.
Well, so it is on the agenda how we normally have stuff on the agenda, which would be under the public hearing, there's also a resolution there,
okay,
as resolution 080401.
well, let me ask you this, why would we do the public hearing when 2 of the 5 members aren't here to hear that comment?
Yep. So,
Now, I'll admit,
Yeah.
there's nobody here that's gonna speak to
and
it,
I
but
think
I'm just saying.
if it would make the count, we could certainly continue the public hearing as well. So the way that happened is the public hearing got scheduled and I wasn't aware, that the two members were certainly gone at that time when the initial public hearing was scheduled.
Can't we just table the public hearing itself?
So you could, in theory, table the public hearing as well and just keep the public hearing open until the next meeting as well.
And then all
I
the
just,
problems.
yeah, I just, the whole thing just doesn't really pass my smell test. I mean, I just think that so we're gonna hold off a vote. They're gonna miss if there were any public comments, and then they're gonna come back 2 weeks from now without hearing anything that was spoken during a public hearing, and then vote on it. I mean, I would think, first of all, myself, I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on something that I didn't listen to the public on.
So
So I guess I don't get why we have to hold the public hearing now. Is there a rush for some reason? Do we need to pass this for?
no, not necessarily. And like I said, the reason why the public hearing is being held is because it was scheduled, and then you can't necessarily unschedule the public hearing. And so I didn't want to create confusion and suddenly not have the public hearing this evening.
Okay, so Rick's right, we could just,
We could table
Table
it,
it.
which would keep the public hearing open until the next meeting. At
That's
that
what we
point,
want.
reopen it if there's any comment that needs to be
okay.
had.
But since we're on this subject, and it's a fairly light night, I wanna go through some of these red lines that I need some clarification on it. Might have been nice to have Scott here though too, unless you feel really good about being able to speak legally, on this stuff, but, so really the EDA would only be required to do, did you say annually?
So for their strategic plan, so if you look under section 5.16 is new language that's been added.
Yep,
And basically says that as the EDA, because the EDA has never worked through a strategic plan before. So as they're working through this, Scott recommended we just add the language that they, to help hold more accountability to the city council, that they then have to make sure they review that annually and bring it back to the city council to kind of update on their plans. Usually each year we give a report, February or March, kind of what's happened around the city economic development wise. And he just thought this would be a good exercise for the EDA to do to keep the council engaged, kind of what it's looking for with its plans.
yeah, but just once a year. So what happens if something pops up middle of the year?
So this is just their general plans. What are the things that they see themselves working on in the coming year? What are they pursuing? Obviously, stuff changes. We even have comp plan amendments that come through.
Right.
We'll do a comp plan once every 5 or 10 years. And so ultimately, if there are things that come up, it would be my position as the executive director of the EDA to make sure the council stays informed as things happen.
And that could be monthly, quarterly?
Yeah, so I know, I mean, generally I'll include stuff in my weekly update, as important things come up too, and I know that we also have 2 council members that sit on the EDA that would also, gauge the field, similar to any other board that council members sit on.
Well, maybe Chuck can speak since he sits on it, although you would, oh no, because you were on it even before you were, brought in as, mayor. What are some of the items that the EDA has been looking at right now, over and above the loans with the new police station?
Well, I think they're finishing up the park.
Yeah, so really, yeah, I think really the big thing that they've been working on for a number of years now is that industrial park.
Right.
And there's 2 lots still open. We've had 2 closed meetings the last couple months with people who were potentially interested in that. And that's kind of what spurred this whole strategic plan in the process, like in the whole first place. Because the EDA was like, we don't really know where we want to go and what to do. And so part of this strategic plan is having a joint meeting with the city council. So sometime in the next month or 2, I was going to work with you guys and with them to set up a meeting where you could all meet together to kind of talk, okay, these are some of the things the EDA may or may not be looking at. Is the city council all right if we start sniffing down these paths? Because they want to make sure they pick something that the city council's okay with. Because it wouldn't make any sense for them to say, hey, we want to actively pursue, let's just say, buying up all of downtown to fix it. And then the city council go, no, we're not doing that. Like, we're not giving you money for that or whatever it's going to take. And so part of the strategic plan process is meeting jointly with the city council to make sure the city council is aware of what it's kind of looking at doing, and giving the EDA blessing to keep sniffing down those paths for attempting to, ultimately the EDA is attempting to increase the tax base to help lighten the load for taxes as well as increase jobs for growth opportunity.
Right.
They're also doing meetings with local businesses to see, if they have problems with any issues that, from the city standpoint.
Well, that's kind of why I brought it up, because I've been hearing rumblings that, they're talking about being in control of housing things and.
I guess they've, the only time housing has even been brought up at the EDA was the fact that it is a potential option, that something that EDAs could do. To this point, that EDA has had very little, if any, interest in any housing projects. So I'm not sure where you would have heard that.
Okay. Well, and it could be hearsay, and it could be,
Yeah.
I don't know, but it
No,
starts from somewhere,
No,
so.
and that's fair. But
And then all of a sudden, now we're creating this district, and we're giving them more power, and then they only have to report back once a year. And, I just find it really,
and
it's piqued my interest all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
and
Why all of a sudden is this, again, this is coming to the forefront too. For 14 years that I've sat up here, and half the staff can attest to it, I've said it pains me how slow government works, and some of the things that we took us years to get done. And now we've had a big issue with, right off the bat, where the police station, where seemed rushed to me. I know that the other council members somewhat disagree with that or totally disagree with it, but it seems very rushed to me and very rushed to a lot of taxpayers as well. And now all of a sudden we're creating this new district, and I think I would believe that does this have to do with something with the funding mechanism? This has to be in place before those bonds can be issued for the police station, is that correct?
Yes, so as I mentioned, so part of the update here is in section 6, removing section 2 that is being removed basically kind of lays out the various bonds that the EDA can use, and then says that they must be issued by the city council.
Right, 6.2 that is.
6.2.
Okay, I'm looking at it.
So, yeah.
That's
so
being deleted.
Yeah, so that's being deleted because it basically would create a circular motion of the city council saying, hey, we'd like you to take out bond. We give you your approval to take out these lease revenue bonds. And then the very charter itself says the EDA can't do it and that the city council must do it. So that pushes it back to the city council. And then the city council though, so this, but looking at 6.1, the EDA is not able to issue any debt without the approval of the city council. Ultimately, the city council must approve of any debt, and the EDA's levy must be certified by the city council. So the city council has given the EDA no more power than it had before. It's just cleaning up language in its enabling resolution.
Okay, so I guess I was looking at the new 6.2.
Okay, yep,
Where the tax levy must be certified by the city council, but,
correct.
so my question would be, let's say the EDA comes up and says, hey, you know what, in 2026, we want $10 million or we want to have the ability for $10 million to do our projects.
Okay,
And if the council said, okay, well, that sounds fine, we have that tax capacity or whatever the excuse is. They've got the approval from the city council right there, but is it gonna be tied to a specific project?
that would be up to the city council.
Right,
So,
and
yeah.
that's so it does take something away from the city council.
How does that take something away from the city council, though?
Well, because the city council, you might have a quorum to give the ability for them to spend $10 million, but if all of a sudden their projects differ from 3 out of the 5 that they want to use that $10 million, we've already approved it for them. So I just want to run into a situation that all of a sudden we're sitting here and all of a sudden I hear through the grapevine that this is going on and this is, yeah, you guys gave them X amount of money and now they're doing this.
No, so their process is the same budget process we've always followed. So every year, the EDA budget comes to the city council and is approved annually with the city council budget. Nothing will change under this. That is, process is still exactly the same. The EDA, that they can't just go out and, if they, for whatever, if they feel like they need $10 million in a year to do one project or whatever that,
Or
however
many
projects that
projects,
is.
Or some project.
Yeah,
They might not even know.
if they feel like they need $10 million that they don't have and will need to levy for it, they still need to come to the city council during the budget process. They need to explain why they need that money and why it would be good for the city council to unlock that money through the budget process. No different than the streets department needing a vehicle or the fire department needing a brand new fire truck here in a couple years. It's the exact same process and nothing is being changed
Okay.
by the language in here.
All right, just as, in a little bit more clear then. So if they came during the budget process and the city council, and they said, hey, here's a laundry list, or we're working on a bunch of stuff that we want, let's say $10 million and the ability to bond. And will they have to, and if that is approved, so let's say the city council says, okay, and under the guise of, you know, we want to, this is gonna promote businesses within town and spur economic growth. And, okay, we bite on it and we allow that. Would they have to come back for individual projects to use within that $10 million?
For something that large, I would argue yes. Like, it would be no different than yes. We as a city council, we approve. I would hope the city council in that state would say, we're not handing you 10 million bucks. Like, we want to know what these projects are and what they cost. And very similar to, we'll say, the utility commission, when they're putting in a new water line, they go to the utility commission and say, hey, like, we want to spend this money to put in the water line. Can we do it? The utility commission, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't just say, here's $10 million, have fun with it this year. And I think the EDA would be the exact same way. They would say, hey, this is the amount of money we have and we are allowed to spend it on this. And so if the city council decided to give them $10 million in tax revenue for a downtown project, then yes, like, so that's partially on the city council of saying, hey, are we just gonna give them a blank check for $10 million? Or are we gonna actually do the same thing we do for all the other departments? Because the other departments have the exact same thing. Like, the street projects done by, led by Public Works are approved at the city council level. Ultimately, spending money and debt issuance is approved, like, if we're issuing debt, that's gonna come back and get formal approval from the city council to issue this amount of debt for this project.
Okay, well, you brought up a great point using the Utilities Commission, because essentially, you're right, the council back whenever, before our time, gave them the ability, they have their own fund, they raise money through the fees that they charge, and they have that, and it goes to the Utility Commission, and the Utility Commission can spend it, and that never makes it over to the council.
That is a state statute thing, and I know, cause I've asked Scott many times, like, how do we navigate certain things like this?
Yeah.
And it is very much under state statute, like, they are like their own entity and are very loose, cause many utility commissions will break away, and I know, like, ours was and came in and like could break away again in the future.
Well, I've asked Scott that question, and theoretically, the council could disband that commission. We're not under any obligation whatsoever to have a utilities commission and I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I'm not advocating for
No.
that, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, that's absolutely right. As elected officials, you have that right.
But state statute also gives them spending power, basically, to operate within their means.
Okay, so the state statute, will that, creating this district, give the EDA, you just said it would give them
It
essentially
does
the
not,
same thing?
it does not, the EDA does not have the same powers as a utility commission.
Sorry for my questions, I'm
No,
just
I think these are
seems
good,
like-
Sean, because I want to make sure that we understand what we've got in front of us here, so there's no confusion on it.
Okay, so I don't wanna waste too much of our time, cause we're gonna table this, is that correct, Rick? Or
Yep.
For, until the other council members are back, so that'll give me time if I have any more additional questions.
Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, I know, it sounds like Scott was gonna plan on being here for the next meeting anyway, so.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, so we can certainly
I was gonna
get
say,
into questions
not
at
that
that
I
point.
like, that might be nice to have him here.
Okay, we don't need to have a vote on tabling, do we?
We don't, but this is a public hearing, so I would recommend.
Closing the public hearing.
I would recommend, we're not closing the public hearing, because we're tabling the public hearing to the next
Right,
meeting,
okay.
but taking any comment from people that may be here. And then we'll just take comment again at the next meeting, since the public hearing will still be open, if that's what the council if they wanted to table the public hearing itself.
Okay,
Motion to open the hearing?
no,
So the mayor can formally open the meeting.
Yes.
I would recommend with our, while it is my understanding, you don't need a formal motion to open the public hearing. I would recommend with our recent troubles with public hearings, we just get into the habit of formally opening public hearings with a vote and closing them with a vote.
okay,
I move to open the public hearing.
Second.
okay. A motion to open a public hearing by Rick, second by Sean, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposition? Okay, I guess I'm opening the floor for any public comments on this resolution regarding the economic development, EDA being, setting up the city as a district.
And this, so what this is just doing, this is just amending the enabling resolution of the EDA. Basically, their organizational, the language that gives them organizational powers is just amending it, though ultimately, they are not gaining nor losing any power that they had before.
Okay, does anyone like to make any comments? Go ahead, state your name and address.
Eric Thorson, 606 Fifth Street. I don't even know if this is for this forum or not. I'm understanding that the EDA is going to the district or the city borders, basically. Does that mean that it automatically, with annexation, do they have to go through this again? Or is it just automatic that it is whatever the limits are?
It is, so anytime those boundaries would change, the EDA would have to hold a public hearing through the EDA, not necessarily the city council, that hold a public hearing through the EDA to basically take comment on those changing borders. So if 10 square miles of land got annexed next year, then they would have to hold a public hearing if they wanted to expand their development district into that new land. So they would just be the border as it is now, setting it down on top of the current city limits, and that's where that border would be until they went through the process again.
Okay, that was my only question.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Any other
They
comments?
would check online. Is there anyone on there?
Any other comments? And Mitch gave us the no-go signal, so there's no comments online. So I guess do we want to, we don't want to close the public hearing.
I would just take a motion
To
to
put it
table the public hearing
Yes.
and have it reopened at the next meeting.
I move to table it, for the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Rick, second by Sean to table the public hearing till the next meeting and see if there's any additional comments from the public, in which that case we can close the public hearing and address the resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 3-0. Okay, next on the agenda. Matt, I don't know, besides what's in the packet, do you have any, are we still ahead of schedule on the street project?
Yeah, we are. Yep, we're actually doing pretty well, even with the rain we got last week. Paving got moved from last Wednesday to Friday, but that didn't slow them up. They're gonna be doing concrete as of today, probably for the next 2 weeks. And then paving the last little bit, the week of the 20th-ish. And then hopefully wrapping up kind of towards the end of August. Only other noticeable thing on the engineer update would be the city center ponding. Me and Ken and a few other staff members met with Chris last week to kind of go over some final design of the pond, how we see that all working. If you've been in the area, we've been doing a lot of utility reviewing the last 3 days, so more to come on that. That's all I got.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on any item in the notes that we got with this item in the agenda? Okay. Thank you. Next, ordinances for introduction. Ken, are you taking this?
I will. Mitch, can you pop my computer up? So I have a very, very brief PowerPoint to kind of go over the discussion that's been had, not only at City Council, but at mostly at Planning Commission the past 6 months here.
Can you put it up front here? I can't see, this one's blank.
Oh,
TV's off.
Oh, I didn't realize it was off.
Can't see that one.
I heard it.
Oh, is
oh,
it?
that one
Oh, there we
shut
go.
off.
Come on, Mitch.
All right, is it up on there now?
Yes, it is.
All right, perfect. So, give you some background here. As City Council will recall, current City Code 9013 related to animals and zoning ordinance 405 regarding the prohibition of non-domesticated animals within city limits, including farm animals, also including chickens, is currently in place. That was amended and restated back in 2016 at the time the topic was last brought up. So since that time, we haven't had a whole lot of discussion. We've had occasional people come in and ask if they can have chickens, but it really wasn't until, it might have been late 2024, early 2025, I believe we had a young girl from 4-H Club had come to the council, asked about the topic, and then I think we had a couple other letters submitted after that time as well. At the February 2025 City Council meeting, we had been directed by the council, staff was, to revisit the topic and look into that further. So what the Planning Commission did with information provided from the city or staff was between March and July, talked about this at different Planning Commission meetings. It did culminate originally with a public hearing regarding a drafted ordinance that would have allowed the keeping of backyard chickens. That was then continued in June and July for revision to that ordinance that would allow the keeping of backyard chickens. There was not unanimous consent of having that ordinance even among the planning commission. At the July meeting, it actually moved forward with a recommendation to have the council consider the ordinance tonight with a 3-1 vote. So 3, 4, and 1 against moving that forward. We did talk and have talked at length about New Prague being the only city in Scott County that does not allow backyard chickens at this point. So the motion from the planning commission, I do want to note, was that 3-1 vote, but they also included in their recommendation to move this forward tonight to have the city council talk about a possible administrative citation process for nuisance matters, of which that would be a separate process. And I know it's something that Councilmember Ryan brought up, and it got brought up at our last planning commission meeting as well, regarding just kind of the slowness of the court system getting any nuisance matter taken care of in a timely manner. And we'll actually talk at a later agenda item during miscellaneous about the administrative citation process and if we want to go that route, but that was included in their motion. The summary of the proposed ordinance would include the following. Again, it would allow the keeping of backyard chickens only, not roosters. It would require an annual permit, basically per property. $15 annual fee is what was recommended by the planning commission. Would allow up to 5 chickens, again, no roosters. Would require and allow a coop up to 8 foot tall and no more than 40 square feet in size. Would allow that to also be set back a minimum of 25 feet from any structure adjacent to the property, as well as any wetland. Would allow coops only in the rear yard, and they would have to be screened from public right-of-way. It would allow a run up to 6 feet in tall that could be movable, again in the backyard only, and also maintaining the same setbacks as the coop, being 25 feet from any structure adjacent to the property or any wetland. Required the chickens be kept in a humane manner per Minnesota Statute 343. And then finally require the removal of the coop and run within 90 days of no longer having chickens, and that's basically to keep vacant coops and runs in a property that are just, you know, unused and becoming more and more of a nuisance and overgrown with weeds and that type of thing. So that was the ordinance as it's written in your packet tonight that the Planning Commission is recommending your consideration for a first reading tonight. You could also look at recommending changes to the ordinance and having staff revise further, or simply not move forward with any ordinance for the allowance of backyard chickens. So those are your options on the table. Again, consider a first reading. If not, the matter would simply die. I would note that, or I would suggest, if you want to wait for the full council, we could also table this matter as well, if you'd want to go that route to get everybody's opinion that's on the council. But at this point, we're simply bringing the ordinance and would like your direction and advising of where to or not take the proposed ordinance.
How you guys wanna do this?
Well, my comment is, I was the mayor in 2016, and Sean, you were on the council, and we voted it down, and I think I have the same issues going now. I know they talk about citations and that thing, but I just think it is a very hard thing to manage. And if there's issues, how do you get those resolved? If one neighbor says it bothers me and this and that, I just think it creates a lot of issues. Especially, you know, being surrounded by farms and all that stuff. If a 4-H kid went to a farmer who had chickens and say, hey, can I come out every day and feed them and all that sort of thing, I think most farmers would be obliging to that. That's just my opinion. I'm not for it, and I wasn't for it in 2016, and I'm not changing my position on it.
Well, I'll agree. I'm not for it either. I missed the planning meeting. I was out of town on business, but It would have been probably 3-2, but I think I might have been able to speak a little bit more passionately with the one person that did vote against it, that perhaps could have changed the third vote. But just for the same reasons that Chuck said, we voted this down before. Can you use the word that the legal process moves so slow in these kind of matters? I would add to that, if the county prosecutors will even take it, because we've had that instance where they don't want to even deal with it. So, and it never sees its day in court, and we're stuck. So, anyways, I would be a no vote as well, but, again, I sincerely believe, I mean, we added that ordinance because of complaints that were, being received, in town. And I don't understand why people, when they build a 1/4 acre house in city limits, that they wanna keep farm animals. I see a difference between if you can't bring the animal in the house and let them run, it's a farm animal and it needs to be outside, and building a house in town wasn't the right thing to do. Just affects too many other people.
Well, my answer is gonna be no too, so, I mean, that's an unanimous right there, I mean, but, so do we wanna just count this as a reading, and, let the other members, in on it too, cause I already know they're both, I think they both said they weren't gonna vote yes to it too, so.
So yes, there is that difference with this one, is it would in theory, would need to be approved twice. And so it would, even if there was full approval tonight, would need to have a
second reading.
with approval at the next time that would.
Well, we already have 3, so
So
even,
if we vote no on this first reading,
Then it's done.
it doesn't go to a second reading, correct? Okay,
And since there wouldn't be a quorum, because all 3 of us said we wouldn't vote.
right,
So-
yeah, even
so
if the
we
other,
could- We could just shut it down right now if you want.
Yeah.
So if I'm gonna vote no, do I still read the amendment the way it is? And then, we'll go through the vote, and then we just all vote no.
So I think you would just read the title of the ordinance, if that was the case, and just say move to deny the ordinance.
I'll make the motion to move to deny, ordinance, 357, amending the city code and zoning ordinance relating to the keeping of backyard chickens.
I'll second that. Okay, any other comments? We got a motion and a second. If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Yeah, okay, any opposition? Okay, it passes 3-0, so that hopefully will put the chickens to bed.
at least for a year.
Year and a half until I'm gone. 8, ordinances for adoption, we have none. Next, we have item number 9, a sign variance for the apartment complex. Ken, I assume you're gonna take that one?
Yep, so another small PowerPoint here for you. Mitch, you could pop that up there. This is another item forwarded from the planning commission meeting last week for variance V7 2025 for a building sign on the building of Bohemia Flats Apartments. And we'll give you a rundown of what happened at the meeting last week. So 1019 Development applied for the sign variance. They were looking to put a 33.5 square foot sign at a height of up to 12 feet above the ground, which exceeds our normal 6 square foot sign limit, and a 10-foot height limit on those building signs in the RH district, which is the high-density residential district. So they're obviously constructing a 54-unit apartment building, Bohemia Flats, at 102 Chalupsky Avenue Southeast. The variance is requested simply to put the name of the apartment over the front canopy to their front door, so it's large enough to be seen from the road and the adjacent strip mall for identification purposes. The variance is requested due to the large size of the building and the large setback from the road. Ultimately, the planning commission did recommend on a 4-0 vote to approve the variance. We'll run over some visuals here for you. So again, the property directly south of Walgreens building is up and nearing completion here this fall. On the upper left corner of the slide, you can see the actual verbiage and the small Bohemia Flats logo that would be over that overhang. And then on the small inset on the bottom, and I'll zoom into a bigger picture here in a minute, it's just over the overhang. And even at 33 square feet on that large apartment building, it's still a very small sign. It will be pretty inconspicuous from the roadway. It's about 157 feet from the road, and we'll run through some photos here. So if you look at that photo in the bottom right, I don't know if you can see my pointer, you cannot, but you can almost barely see the white entrance kind of in that, the L shape furthest back. It's just over that entryway there. I'm gonna move forward to some zoomed in areas here. So area highlighted in red, that actually makes it look bigger than it actually is, but we're just trying to highlight where that Bohemia flat sign would be located. So just over the entrance there, nothing very large. And really the discussion we had at Planning Commission was that we have not had sizable apartment buildings like this, for 40 plus years. And the sign ordinance for the 6 square foot limit is really more appropriate for what we had been getting, which is like 4-plex buildings previous to some of the bigger developments. So with the Unified Development Code update, we will be looking at modifying what would be allowed on these larger scale apartment buildings. But ultimately, the Planning Commission felt that this was a good variance to grant and provide that immediate identification of where the front door is and not be overly large in size. So again, their recommendation was to approve with the 6 findings in the resolution in the packet, and I will just leave the final slide here again. And again, that red box makes it look even bigger than it actually is, but it's just over that overhang on the east side of the building.
So the signs on the strip mall, how big are those?
Those are generally speaking about 60 square feet for each one. They're limited to 15% of the building face.
Okay,
So each, unit can have 15%. This would be less than 2% of the building face.
okay.
So pretty minimal.
I'm sorry, Ken, is this a lighted sign?
It is backlit.
It
yes.
is backlit, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And it would have to meet all of our sign lighting requirements as well as the whole parking lot lighting and everything. So
Is it just letters, or is it actually have white on the back?
it is I guess a channelized sign, so the whole back thing the back cabinet will be lit. If that makes sense. So not individual letters.
So if you wanna move it, you can there.
Okay, any other questions for Ken? Okay, if not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the variance for 25-08-04-02, variance number V7-2025.
Second.
Got a second by Rick. Any other questions or comments before we vote? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh, I assume you're gonna take this small cities?
Yes, I am. So, just kind of ask some background information. Late last year, I believe it was right after Thanksgiving, staff was informed by the Department of Economic Development, or Employment and Economic Development, DEED, that the city was holding some small cities development program funds that either needed to be used or they needed to be sent back to the state. We did some digging on this, and ultimately at the end of 2024, the city was sitting on about $580,918. Now that money basically was acquired by the city, and Ken can certainly, he's been here through most of it. Usually when the city would do some sort of small cities development program, such as allowing people to fix up their homes in certain areas of town, or a downtown redevelopment type grant, the city would receive funds from the state and then would administer those funds. Some of the funds ended up not getting administered because, I know especially when we did a downtown kind of commercial stuff, we didn't have nearly as many applicants as we hoped we would. So we ended up sitting on a lot of money. I know, if it went out to, say residential homeowners, a lot of times those loans are forgivable if you stay in the house for a certain length of time. But if you were to then move, you would then have to pay back a portion of that loan to the city. So that money's kind of sat there because the EDA has not had any of these other programs since then. And many times because of the lack of participation, they say, do we even want to go through this again? Well, like I said, the state reached out at the end of '24 saying we had this money, we needed to figure out a way to either use it or send it back. So since then, we've been trying to work with the state, who has been very difficult to work with. It's usually we will get a hold of them and hear back a month or two later. But we have finally gotten confirmation that the city would be able to use this particular deed money if it is able to help alleviate what the state would consider to be a slum blight area. And so then we started digging into, well, what is slum blight? How do we get into that? And they basically said the city council has to declare portions of the city slum or blight to be able to take advantage of the funds. Speaking with Ken, it sounds like back in 2016 and 2017, the city actually did this to do some work downtown and use deed money the same way. And I included maps from both 2016 and 2017 kind of showing the areas of downtown. Ironically enough, both of those areas just leave out half of the portion of city center. Otherwise, it sounds like we wouldn't even had to do anything since we've already declared it. So part of this process is ultimately, I get all the way around that saying, we could use, assuming that the areas, a certain portion of the drainage area is considered slum and blight, we could use portion or all of this money to build our stormwater pond the city's been discussing for decades out there. So to get to that point though, we would have to go through a process of declaring the drainage area in part or full as slum and blight on paper so that the state can say, okay, you can now use these funds to do that. Because we don't have a ton of that experience, I know Ken has connections over at Bolton and Mink, who does work with small cities many times on administering these deed grants like this, and would likely be willing to work with us with the city. We'd even be able to use some of these funds to pay Bolton and Mink, so we wouldn't have to worry about dipping into taxpayer funds. But
once Bolton and Mink comes through and they certify that as blight, does it have to go back through the EDA then and then back to us?
Yep, so my understanding of this whole process is that we'd work with Bolton and Mink to say, okay, this is the official area of the map that maybe drains into or would drain into this area. And then Bolton and Mink would go property by property and say, okay, we can call this one slum and blight, this one is not, this one is not. If you look on that map, that's kind of what we did with the downtown properties. They went door by door and said yes, no, yes, no. And then by doing that, that would then be brought back to the city council to certify their work. And once that's done, that would unlock the ability for us to use these funds to help alleviate some of that slum and blight by cleaning up flooding and drainage by constructing the stormwater pond. That make sense?
Yeah, and does it need action, or are you just looking for a recommendation to move
So
on?
tonight, I am kind of asking for a blessing to continue down the path of exploring this, just so that we don't, because I know we still do need to talk to Bolton and Mink about exactly what it would look like on their side, what their cost would be, and whether it would be worth us. If they come back and say, oh, it'll be $50,000, it might be worth sending it out and seeing if there's anyone else that could help us. But I didn't want Ken and I barking up a tree for too long without, I guess, the council's blessing to say, hey, yeah, we feel like this could be, I would hate to send the money back, because ultimately it gets sent back and then another community ends up using it. So if we can use it to knock out a project that council's been talking about for decades, I think this is a great opportunity.
You got my vote, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I think I would
even before you
consider-
said that, I was thinking that would be the area.
yeah, I think that would definitely, let's
Exactly what I said too.
continue pursuing those options, and once we get,
When you get a little more information.
we
we'll
get
send
a
it back.
confirmation exactly we could use these funds for that that drainage area and that stuff, and maybe Matt will have a estimated cost, right, Matt? You know, then we can kind of look at it and say, you know, this is perfect.
Yep.
But I do remember, Sean, I remember doing all this in 16 and 17, so. And Robin, these, you do tie to the number?
Yes.
Okay.
Where is that money sitting? What fund?
It's sitting, what do they call it? Is it just an SCDP fund?
Yeah, we just have it in our small cities.
Oh, is it listed as small cities?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think if you go in the audit books every year, like it's in there.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I think you got consensus to move forward, and hopefully in the next month or so, we can get some definitive answers, and, but I agree with you, we don't need to give the city, or the
Yeah,
state the money back.
Nobody wants to give that back, so.
Right.
Get on it.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Item 11, miscellaneous. Are we gonna discuss anything there, Ken?
No, just if you have questions, I'll take them on citywide cleanup, but, right in line with where we had, some things were slightly up and some were slightly down, but, the only thing I guess I would add is the county added additional funding into our grant for this year, that we can host a, event with bridging that collects like, good mattresses and good furniture and good housewares. And we're looking at doing that sometime this fall. Raven Stream Elementary is offering their parking lot for that, probably on a Saturday. And basically the county will pay for bridging to come down and bring a couple of, they're not really semi-trucks, but like those pod storage units and collect items on a weekend. So that would kind of wrap up our citywide cleanup event for the year. And that would be a new thing that we've done. We did do a bridging event last year that was completely taken on by bridging at no cost to us, but the county has partnered with them formally for willing to do that. So we're looking into it, but.
How do you notify the residents? How are you gonna do that one?
Oh, we probably put something in the paper and city newsletter, that type of thing. Tentatively looking like a date sometime early October on a Saturday, kind of a morning type thing.
Okay, that's a good idea.
More to come on that, but it wouldn't cost us anything.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Okay, Unified Development Code.
Yep, so I'm just providing an update on that. So that was another topic we discussed at the planning commission last week. Jeff Motzke from Bolton and Mink, our consultant on that update, provided an overview. The memo that is in the packet dated July 30th is what we looked at the planning commission meeting. I did not include the full 275-page draft document in your packet. If you look at the planning commission packet from last week, it is in there if you want to read through everything. But the main changes to note are on page 62 and 63 of the packet, or the city council packet here tonight, with changes to lot sizes just slightly for the single-family zoning districts, adding some language for tree preservation, trying to, as best we can, address when people want to clear-cut properties, particularly before development. So we can address that and hold on to some nice trees on properties as best we can. Adding some additional architectural design requirements for commercial and industrial buildings. Again, nothing substantial, just more mirroring what the EDA has been requiring, like for buildings in the industrial park, adding some brick wainscoting along the front rather than just having a plain steel pole building. Revising our plan unit development regulations. We haven't used those too much in New Prague. They are used heavily in other cities throughout the state. And basically what it does is it allows for some variance from the development code, both for zoning and subdivision regulations. But you get exchange of benefit from the city. It might be additional parkland. It might be additional funding for road and utility extensions that we maybe wouldn't normally get. So that is modernized language updated to the current state statutes that are related to that. Adding a public hearing requirement for variances. We currently, and state law doesn't require a public hearing for variances, even though we've taken public comment. we would, suggest adding a public hearing requirement for that, just for transparency, and we do it for every other land use request anyway. Adding back in administrative permits for fences and accessory structures like small sheds. We have not required, administrative permits for those since roughly 2010. The reason to go back to that is we've had, increasing numbers of improperly placed sheds and fences, either being over lot lines, in easements, you know, you name it. So just trying to get that, back in order. The reason we got rid of that back in 2010 is, when we had a staff layoff in the, planning department, and just didn't have the staff wherewithal to keep up with that, end of things. So, looking at adding that back in, looking at our minimum parking requirements, trying not to have, you know, oceans of parking at, you know, places like Coburn's, but also, make it so we don't have congestion. So it's kind of a fine line to walk there, but looking at those. And then, the other thing, I don't know where this will go exactly, but looking into, the potential of allowing accessory dwelling units, which could be like a apartment building above an attached garage that you could rent out. That's been a topic at, Scott County and the scale, initiatives to look at all cities doing that. So I don't know that we'll actually allow them. It's just looking into it at this point and providing that information. And then, finally, just updating, the ordinances to match state statute and industry standards. So, the other major thing that I put in the packet is adding some graphics that help not only staff, but the public better, interpret, the ordinances, and just try to make it, in more plain language for easier reading for everybody. Then I did want to note related to that, we will be at Checkout New Prague with a booth, gathering public input and, basically promoting a small survey, which is also in the packet, in draft form on some of the questions we'll be asking, just a little 2-page, actually 3-page survey. And, a QR code, if people want to stop by, they can scan it, take it later, they can fill it out in paper at Checkout New Prague, and we'll see if we get some input on, a number of different topics, just kind of on a high level, from aesthetic requirements, parking requirements, that type of thing. So,
Check out New Prague is what date?
Thursday this week from 5 to
Thursday?
8:30 at Memorial Park. So unless you have questions, we're nowhere near done. This will run through the end of the year, and we do plan to have, a more direct update with you at the council level, before we get to any final adoption stage that we're still actively researching and updating language. So, just wanted to give you a quick update on that. And that should do it for the, UDC update.
Okay.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, the remove structure for habitation, what was that? I can't,
Which one, Sean?
number one on page 65. 6.002G, page one, well, it says page one. I mean, there's been a lot of things in the news about cities having to battle these granny pads or whatever they call them out back, secondary houses on
Accessory dwelling units.
accessory dwelling, thank you.
You know, Sean, I'd have to look at the full, 200-plus page document on that.
Okay,
I believe that one was in relation to, we had some minimum dimension requirements that said you couldn't have your home be less than 22 feet in any given dimension. That used to be allowed by state law, and that had been revoked a few years ago.
okay.
I'll have to check that, though.
So none of this is locked, I mean, this
No,
could be
not at all.
changed at all. Cause I know at planning commission, it was number 8 where you're talking, 32 as far as the dense housing per,
Mhm.
I don't know what it is, per acre? Or-
Yep.
Okay. That went up drastically from where it had been in city code, right? Cause I think New Prague had 18 or 24.
We were at, prior to the 32, I think we were at 22 units an acre prior.
Okay, and then that jumped up substantially, and I'm just,
Yeah, so right now we're at parity with other cities in, kind of Scott County.
but this is New Prague.
Yep.
Yeah, so, just because everybody else is doing it, doesn't mean we have.
So it would be too, Sean, for this, it would be a reminder that it would be in certain zoning districts, so the council would have the ability to say, we only want that in this area. of town,"
Okay.
Or that sort of thing.
Yeah, that would
It
only
doesn't-
be
it
the
doesn't-
high
It doesn't
density
just blankets
residential.
that suddenly you and I are in the middle of an apartment complex.
Okay, I just wanna make sure that we, you know, that,
Yeah, and we talked, you know, we still want to protect, obviously, single-family zoning and all that, which has been under attack by the, certain things at legislature,
Right.
and, yeah, we're still very mindful of that.
Okay.
So.
and you know, like you said, I mean, just, I get Bolton and Mink, they probably use just kind of a blanket, well, this is what most cities are doing, so that's what we'll kind of,
Yeah. and
they're
that-
in that mindset, so then they roll that in, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's
Exactly.
what the people.
Yep, and they're just
Prague one.
providing that background and that research to say, hey, here's, again, industry standard. We don't need to follow that. A lot of what is in our ordinance is what had already been there and what has been working.
Yeah.
So they're, recognize that as well, but they want to at least bring up the topics. Another topic in here, I think I kind of breezed over it, was about EV car charging. Do we want to require EV car charging in parking lots, or do you just want to provide for it? We already provide for it, but it's not a requirement, but some cities are making it a requirement.
Oh, I see, okay.
Those are the questions we'll ultimately have the final discussion on, and would obviously take to vote with a final version of this, so yeah, we're making progress here. I think the bulk of the time so far has been spent going over the legal review and then just getting it organized into, you know, all these documents were separate and putting them into one big document with a, you know, searchable table of contents and everything, so.
Okay. Thank you, that was it.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on that? If not, administrative citations. Is this something we need to address now that we're not going?
We don't
or-
necessarily need to. I would like to bring it up.
Okay.
This is something actually Chief Applin and I have talked about a number of times recently here. So, Tim, feel free to chime in at any point. But as Sean mentioned, and as we've mentioned, for anything from people not mowing their lawns to, you know, not obtaining their rental licenses to junk in people's yards, we have had a heck of a time having this move at any point when you write a citation and having that get resolved once it goes through the court system. It can take 3 months to even get a court date. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's almost been the norm lately. So from the time we issue that citation, if they don't take care of it, till it even gets a court date, almost talking 3 months, and that obviously does not make neighbors happy. It puts us in an odd situation of, hey, we gotta wait for the court system to play out. It does not correct that eyesore or that nuisance. So, the other issue we've had is, the seriousness of the code violations and nuisances. In our opinion, and I think a lot of other Scott County cities would agree, has not been, where we would like it to be, in as much as, we'll say, help me with the wording here, deals being made before the court hearings, that's probably not the right word. Agreements with the prosecutors and the people we have ticketed, and then we are not consulted with on a staff level on, you know, are you okay with, you know, whatever fine, and then they are just told not to violate again within a year. Again, that doesn't clean up the issue. So, we had talked with the city attorney's office about this initially in relation to rental licenses not getting basically applied for and obtained as a quicker way to deal with those, but it can also be used for anything from, like I said, any nuisance type item, you know, mowing, exterior storage, junk cars, you know, backyard chickens if we would have adopted that. So it's just a way that you can appoint, as, through an ordinance, certain staff to issue citations that are local, they're not through the court system, and they can happen quickly, and the idea is to compel compliance without going the criminal route, because they are, at that point, just a civil penalty and a violation at that point. And obviously, we're not trying to create revenue, we're just trying to compel a you know, resolution to the issue. So just wanted to bring it up. There are cities that have done this. We would obviously need to work with the city attorney to draft ordinance language, but at this point, we just thought it was worth bringing it to your attention and see if that's something you'd like to look into further. I don't know, Tim, if you have anything to add onto that from your standpoint, but I don't know, we've issued a lot more criminal citations related to these nuisance things in the past year and a half than we ever have. And I don't know if it's just the general climate we're in, the letters and even the citations aren't getting, the traction we would like to. So I don't know if this would help that much. At least you'd have some citation revenue and you could kind of continue to cite somebody till they comply. But again, we're not really getting that now either, so.
Do they hold up in court? These administrative citations?
Well, the administrative citation wouldn't go necessarily to court.
No, but I'm just saying, if someone said, hey, I got 3 citations, $1,000, and they get a lawyer, and the lawyer says, you know, let's,
They would appeal to the city.
They would
council.
appeal to you, the city council.
Okay.
And the city attorney would then, if needed to come and weigh in on that, they could do that. The second option is if they don't comply with the administrative citation, you could go the criminal route, which is the next step for that. So
Okay.
many cities do this for snowbird parking, dogs, cats, you know, any number of things. There are combinations of what cities choose to do. We're not alone in this, and it seems to be something that is just, and Ken and I, as Ken alluded to earlier, have talked about. It's just a lack of compliance. We would send letters and people would correct the issue. Whereas now, there's a letter, or there's a warning, there's a comply by this date, and then it's citation. Well, we may be into that for a month already, right? Sending letters and say you have to afford them the opportunity to become in compliance, but then there's a hearing, and then you plead guilty, not guilty. That was 3 months out. Now we set a court date, they don't show up, or ask for a continuance, now we're another 2 months out. And that's where this snowballs, and residents are calling us asking for an update, or why isn't this fixed, or what can we do? And our only answer is we can point to where the court system is at, and we can't make the wheels go any faster than they are. And I can understand that from a resident standpoint. If they're dealing with a neighbor who has an issue that's affecting them, that would be frustrating for me as well. But I don't know what this looks like, if that fixes our problem, if everyone just becomes in compliance when we start administrative citations. But just in the few that we've had, I think that things start to move when we start issuing citations. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but things have been fixed or addressed, I guess. At least the conversations get started instead of ignoring letters and just doing nothing. I guess it's an option for the council to look at and I guess give some direction.
Well, I'm all for it. A good example is the tent that's set up behind Rusty Spoke again after we went through that process. And it's right back to where it was. So if somebody could remind her that her liquor license is coming up in April, and I'm gonna remember it. So just because she fixed it real quick when we had to hold that over her head. But we don't have that luxury with everybody. So, I mean, if this is gonna help, I think it is. And you know what, Ken, you said, we're not trying to make revenue. No, I think it should hurt, and these guys have to pay.
I mean, to that point, we do have staff time that we put into this.
Yeah.
That this, at least for some of those processes, would help reimburse that.
Yeah.
So right now, we get basically nothing. I think the ticket revenue goes to the county, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, right.
And this would change that?
If we did administrative citations, that would come back, directly back to us
Yeah,
to help offset our time.
yeah.
And ultimately, we might have to bring, I would hope that would be the exception rather than the rule of then going the criminal route and then waiting the, 3+ months just to get a hearing, so.
No, I'm all for, giving you guys any, extra ammunition, so.
I agree, so if we're just agreeing on it, all three of us agree. So.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and, I think we should invite our county attorney to a council meeting, cause I'd like to have some questions about the guys that report to him, and why aren't they taking these seriously? These are real problems that we have ordinances, we expect them, our taxpayers pay their salaries, we expect them not to
And I
drag
think,
their feet and to just pass on it.
yeah, a couple that we've had, we've tried to figure out what's going on there. And I think Ken and I we've had conversations with one attorney. The case gets shifted to another attorney. The conversations that Ken and I have had don't get relayed to that attorney.
So they don't have any idea of the conversations that we had and where we're at, and there's no phone call that's made back to us to see, hey, has this problem been rectified before we proceed, and I think that's where we've fallen a little short.
Okay. Well, could you extend,
I can certainly reach out and see.
who is it, Ron?
On Hosevar.
Oh, yeah, Hosevar, yeah.
Yeah, I will reach out and see if I can get that on a future agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement to
So
proceed,
we'll gather more information. and-
proceed forward, because I agree.
There's two of them I gotta talk to you about, Tim, that, so, yeah, I totally agree.
Okay. I guess we're pretty much to the miscellaneous items discussion. Rick, do you have anything to bring up?
Yes, I do. I had gotten a complaint on the sign over at or at the mill. And, I talked to Josh. He said he'd talked to, Ken. And, during that process, I got another phone call. It's a guy from the same side of the building. There's just one store, the light on it lights up the whole side of the town over there. So go out there at night and take a look at it. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we have a light meter and we'll get out there and do that.
Yeah, do that, and it's bright. The other day when it was, smoky outside, it lit that smoke up. I thought it was day over there.
Yeah, I wanna know, so we did issue the sign permit. It has not been finalized yet. We're waiting for the electrical final, and then, I'll do the, zoning final, but, this would be part of that, so it'll be, before we do any final approval, we'll make sure it's in compliance.
I'll notify both of them residents.
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope, that'll do it.
Sean, you have anything?
No, I don't have it.
I don't have anything, so I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
You got a second by Sean. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposition? We're out of here. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you.
Yeah, Tim, I gotta talk to you about both of them. And I keep forgetting, so I do gotta talk to you.